Oscar.
I would like to welcome back Trevor James, Brent Diroma, Danny McHugh, and Jason Michael Evans to the podcast. These four gentlemen play the members of the group The Four Seasons in Riverside's production of Jersey Boys, which plays January 2nd through the 28th. You mentioned in the last podcast that three of you have worked together before. Mm-hmm. Danny, this is the first time. Mm-hmm. First time in this show, have you worked with any of these other guys before in something else, in another project?
Not any of these three, but there are 4 or 5 members of the rest of the cast that I have been very fortunate enough to work with previously, last year.
Well, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor, you said you played him before.
Yeah.
What kind of research did you do the first time? And have you learned, I know you have, but have you used anything that you've learned for this production, or are using, or have used from other research that you've done on him?
You know, the first time I ever did this show, which was with both Brent and Jason, I had the privilege of playing Joe Pesci and covering Frankie Valli, played by Chris Colley-Jones, who was Frankie Valli in the first national tour. And I think the best thing that could have happened for me with this role was getting to learn the role but not have to do the role right away. It was really awesome. I got to vocal double him off stage and learn all the music and learn all the words and watch him do the role, which was a big influence on probably the way I do the role. But then taking it into my own hands. Yes, there's all the research you do on the real person and everything, but it all comes back to this book of this musical being so strong and these characters being so alive on the page that so much of the work is done for you.
Very three-dimensional.
Yeah, very three-dimensional. And well, everyone can bring their own kind of authentic self to these roles. There's no drastically different ways to do them because they're so specific on the page. Mm-hmm. And so I think in that the book and the music does a lot of the heavy lifting for you, and you just have to be available for the ride. And I think, obviously, I'm trying to replicate somewhat of a style in which Frankie Valli sang. Frankie Valli has a voice kissed by God that will never be replicated. That's why these guys are what they were. But what's really smart about this show is the way it's structured. You get to hear whoever's playing Frankie Valli sing non-Four Seasons songs first. And so you kind of warm up to whoever's playing Frankie. And then by the time you get to the Four Seasons numbers, if I've done my job right, the audience has kind of accepted, oh, this is our Frankie Valli for the evening. And so you're not as there's not as much of a wall up of like, let's see how he does with Sherry, because you've already gotten used to the voice already. Yeah. So I think in that regard, I think it's a saving grace for whoever plays Frankie Valli to be able to sing songs that most people wouldn't have heard Frankie Valli sing just yet. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of it is just vocal stamina and taking care of myself and rest and taking those moments of rest where I can kind of replenish and then give my all on stage the next show. It's one of those where you don't want to have to hold back, so the rest and being a bit of a hermit is worth it because on stage this is one of the best musicals. Now,
I'm sure that there's a lot of material for you to research with regards to Frankie.
Yeah.
But what about the other guys in the group? You know, Tommy DeVito, Bob Gaudio, Nick Massi. Did you guys see videos of them? Or are you trying to sort of get an essence of who these people were on stage?
With Nick, the extracurricular material is few and far between. Like pretty much everything that is known about him in one way or another is worked into the script. Very clean guy, very militaristic tendencies. I mentioned in the last episode he was older than everyone else, so he was the only one who fought in the war, and he kind of took some of those like exactisms. He liked things a very particular way. So in regards to Nick, like there's not much information other than what's given to you in the script, and that information is plentiful, but more than enough, I think, to make a compelling character. But because he was not the most commercially successful of the three, he didn't have any leading numbers. He was okay with that.
He was his own man. He made his own decisions.
So that kind of info doesn't like exist on the World Wide Web for him, not as much as the other guys. But yeah, watching the videos, see how he moves, see how he interacts, like that's always helpful for sure.
And you mentioned before that because there wasn't a set thought process, that they didn't, Nick has this sort of sound or this sort of movement. You could create something. It's almost like in $1 Million Quartet, where everyone knows the Elvis and the Johnny and the Jerry Lee. They just don't know Carl Perkins, and he's the one that people sort of make their own creating, and it's sort of like the same for Nick.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of have to teeter across that line, because some of the people on our creative team who are wonderful are Jersey Boys like purists. You know, this is what they've done for decades and thousands of performances. So like with Nick Massi, he's the bass out of the four of them, but in real life he was more of a tenor. He just happened to be the only one who could sing those low notes. So if you ever hear his little specials in Sherry or Walk Like a Man, it's very airy. There's not a lot of basso profundo to it, and that's
Do you know what that means?
No, it's
Russian
bass.
for something. Profound bass.
Is that not what it
Profound
means?
bass? No, I just had to say that.
So I usually sing it in my own voice, whereas in this production, the creatives who like to keep it a little more true to, I guess, the source material want it to sound more like I'm having a hard time reaching those lower notes. So it's very fun in that way to work with people who know the show so well. But yeah, I think I do have a little bit more creative license than the other guys, just because not a lot's known about him.
Right.
For Bob, besides looking up his extensive discography, because not only did he work for the Four Seasons, but he produced and wrote for many massive stars in his time. But I watched a couple of interviews of him. I was just trying to get a sense of who he is, knowing that he was the tallest of the Four Seasons and is usually cast so. I am not over 6 foot, and I'm not.
You read over 6 feet.
Thank you.
You read over
So,
6 feet.
You act
over 6
yeah.
feet.
I act over 6 feet. I have wanted to play this part for at least a
6 foot
decade, and every listing that I ever see for it is Bob Gaudio, 6 feet or taller. And so it's like, so every time that I've gone in, like, because I have, and just it hasn't been time, and it was time this time, and I'm very, very, very grateful.
Well, we're grateful
And he's great.
you're here. And this is the first time all of you have been here.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other side, so hopefully it's the first of many, many times.
Yeah.
Now, Senor Brent, your bio says that you've come out of retirement.
We got it.
Doesn't
Thanks,
it now?
Gail. Yeah. The last sentence, the special thank you to my family, my kids, and thank you to Gail for bringing me out of retirement. Yeah, I haven't. I was on the second national tour of Jersey Boys. I started as Hank in the ensemble, and I covered Bob, and then. Yeah, then we did it at Stages, and this is the first musical I've done in the past 2 years, but prior to that it was Stages. I hadn't been in the business since like 2017, but I've been very lucky and honored to be asked to return to the stage again as Tommy in these past 2 productions. I never thought I would play Tommy ever in a million years.
Why?
Well, I don't consider myself a Tommy, but he is, saying that, one of the most fun roles that I've gotten the privilege to play, in the sense that it is quite the removal from, my normal self, and especially not touching a script or anything like that for years at a time, to kind of reach for this, what feels to me like opposite side of the spectrum a little bit as a character, is a challenge, but a welcome one, in the sense that it doesn't feel like as much of a reach as it does like I get to play again, and kind of similar to Nick, I think, in the sense of, the full group. Tommy doesn't have that much, spotlight on him throughout the success of Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. But he does carry very proudly on his shoulders the fact that he is the reason they're there. And if it weren't for him,
the one who put it all together,
things would not have happened. So in that regard, his commitment to and as persistent and the perseverance he shows, not just throughout the show, but like throughout his life, to make this happen for himself and Frankie and Nick and then Bobby, I feel like that's something I can absolutely get behind, and the fact that how am I still doing this as a, what I mean, like, and I get to do it here, this incredible theater you guys have in my now home state of Florida, just 3 hours away from my front door. In that way, yeah, it's outrageous to be away from theater and come and have the opportunity to come back and, number one, work at a brilliant theater with people that like I love already. You know what I mean?
Like, it's been a week, and we're all in love with each other.
It's good. Like and I think it's in large part due to our stage management, our creative team. All of that. It all trickles down, right? So. You start if you're healthy and good up at the top there, then that kind of, we all follow suit a little bit, and it's very easy to put up a show even when it's a monster like this one, when you're set up for success to begin with. So I don't know if I answered your question.
It's a good answer. But you did bring up your home base is now Florida.
Yes. Yeah.
And where are you guys based?
They're all in different places.
I think we are now.
Yeah, Chicago.
I'm LA.
LA.
And I'm in Queens, New York.
You stuck it out, man.
Of all the four of you, you are closest to the theater hub. Does it make it more difficult for you guys to go out for auditions or whatnot, being based not necessarily in New York?
My agents are New York based, and so a lot of the work that I'm going in for is New York based work. And one thing and a little bit before the pandemic, but that the pandemic gave us was everything starts now with a self-tape, usually. So being in LA, it's pretty easy for me to just put myself on tape, and then if there's another round or another callback or anything like that, I'm more than happy to hop on a flight and go to New York and finish out whatever journey with whatever audition is. So no, I don't find it to be any extra difficult than when I did live there for a few years. But I was born and raised in LA, and then pandemic kind of brought me home, and I rebased there for now. Well, yeah, no, I find that I'm not missing out on any opportunity, which is great.
Which is great.
Yeah, same thing. Agents based out of New York. I lived there for like 6 years, so whenever I go back, I feel like I've got a good feel for it.
You made the connections.
Yeah, and Chicago's also kind of its own self-sustaining little theater community. They don't bring in a lot of people from the outside, and the people who live there stay pretty true to the Chicago theater scene. So while I do still go in for stuff in New York, Chicago's been the main focus since I moved there about 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have played theaters, you've done films, you've done TV. How were you bitten by the bug? I mean, when did you sort of start being interested in the performing arts? Did you have a family that really pushed you or supported you in that endeavor?
I will say that my family specifically looks at me and my sisters and have asked the question, where did me and my sisters come from? Because all three of us, I'm the oldest, all of us got the bug at a pretty early age and just loved to sing and loved to dance. And my father can carry a tune. My mom was a great dancer. My grandfather on my dad's side loved to do a little soft shoe. But that's about it.
Whose grandpa does?
Personally, my first memory of life is being 4 years old and watching Singing in the Rain at my grandmother's house. That's my very first memory of life. I have a Singing in the Rain tattoo. It says Sunset and Camden. Here we are, Sunset and Camden. So that is my my favorite movie, and I also got to play Don Lockwood in 2016. So that was like
fun.
Absolute dream come true. So Gene Kelly is kind of like the reason that I am, and and I always loved it. I never thought I could do it as a job until I was 19, and I had this opportunity came through. I was in a community theater production of Joseph. I was playing the Pharaoh, and the director of a local regional theater called the Chanhassen Dinner Theater in Chanhassen, Minnesota, asked the director of Joseph if he would tell me about the auditions for Cats. And so my very first professional job when I was 19 years old was a 9-month run of Cats.
Wow.
And I thought...
You did a 9-month
I
run?
sure did.
Are you still watching?
There's a lot of
Cats. Well, because I was 19. But that was but I had 1 year of college under my belt, and when that opportunity came, I said, this is my chance to see if I even like it. Because I had never, I did shows in high school, but that's 2 weekends and then you're done. And so I thought, okay, this is my chance to see if I like it.
If you don't tell me what cat you were, I'm gonna.
I was Rum Tum Tugger. Yes, I was.
Classic.
Yes. But it was after that. Okay, I love this. So I worked professionally for a year, and I said, "This is great. I need to go get better, though." And so I went back to school, did a BFA in musical theater in 3 years because I already had a year of general studies out of the way. So my college experience, the second part of it became a conservatory, basically, because all of my generals were done. So I only had theater classes for 3 years, and so I did the major in 3, and then I got out and I started working, and have been working ever since.
Amazing
Knock on
story.
wood.
Yeah. Keep talking. Brent?
My mom was on tour very shortly after I was born.
Wow.
And it was a show at the time. It was in '88, mind you, and it was a show called Hollywood on Tour.
Oh, cool.
And it was a tour of basically 3, sometimes 4, like impersonators.
Oh.
So one was Elton John. For some reason, my memory of that was he was incredible. They had a Michael Jackson. They had an it was always a rotation, and they would hire different impersonators to do their own segments. But my mom was a backup singer for this tour, and I went on tour with her, and seeing my mom, how the time of her life.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Singing backup and dancing her ass off. Excuse me.
Excuse me, Mom.
Yeah, sorry, Mom. I was fighting as a child to get on stage with my mom and dance with her. So that was definitely the first and the most in-depth exposure, that I at as 1 year old, 1 year old. That I could ever imagine having. And then my family had always supported and pushed me to improve and get better, and did my first musical in high school. And I remember Michael Amix saying to me, "You think you're too cool for this, don't you?" And I was like, no. And it bit me. I think my first real musical was Brigadoon.
Oh, wow.
And I played Harry Beaton, fell on a rock and died.
Such a good role for you.
Thanks, man. Those jazz shoes fit like crazy. And then, I really after that, it was the people. It was like the camaraderie that, after seeing my uncle performs and does Tokyo Disney and Radio City Music Hall for the Christmas Spectacular every year as a vocalist. My grandmother taught music for 20 years. It's a family of music people.
It's in your blood.
Yeah, I think so. Along with my grandfather, who's just in West Palm Beach, taught chorus also for many years. So it's just kind of always there. And
Grandpa's going to come and see you.
Oh yes, Grandpa's coming. The whole family, my kids will be here.
Yes.
Exciting.
It's really nice.
It's a party.
Yeah, it would be. I don't know for my grandpa, he might go home. But
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I was a sports kid growing up. I was baseball, basketball, soccer, but early on as well, what came into the mix was my parents approached me about an after-school program through our local community theater called Golden Performing Arts Center, and they asked if I wanted to do the after-school enrichment program that they were offering for my elementary school, and I said sure, and I did Annie, and I was Rooster, and I remember stepping out on stage and saying my first line, and then it got a laugh. And from then I was like, oh, whoa, this is cool. And then so I grew up at this community theater, and oh gosh, God bless this community theater, just because it really instilled an appreciation in the Golden Age classics, getting to do Oklahoma and getting to do Annie and Bye Bye Birdie and all these other shows that are of that kind of Golden Age period, The Music Man. It really made me really appreciate the craft of theater. And then as I continued along in high school and everything, I fell in love truly with acting and storytelling. And I always say about this show, because Frankie Valli is a very tough sing, and I don't know if I would want to go through what I have to put my body through for the show if the book and the acting side of it all wasn't so rich and so fulfilling, and that's really what keeps me coming back to theater and getting to look someone in the eye on stage and just try to reach them, and then the audience gets it if you're reaching them. That whole side of it just keeps me hungry and keeps me engaged, and has made me. I went to college for it, and then I've been out in the world and been lucky enough to keep working.
Well, there's something about live performances. I mean, you're giving out energy, and hopefully the audience is taking it in, but also giving it back to sort of re-energize you on stage. And every day, every performance is different because you have different audience members. So hopefully, I know the Vero Beach audiences are going to just give you as much energy as you can stand. But hopefully you get that everywhere.
Mind you, though, I have to say about this guy, on any when this show opened and all the tours it ever did, there's what's called a two-show Frankie. Do you know what the two-show Frankie does? Saturday matinee and Sunday matinee. Right though, this guy is doing all of these shows,
all of them,
right? Like without fail. Amazing. So it's a testament to his state power, man. That's nuts.
The last time he did it was at 12,000 feet.
Up in Aspen. So that was I texted Jason when we both got offered this. I was like, I can't wait to do this not at 1,000 feet, even perchance below sea level. I know. It's very nice in this climate.
Yeah.
Jason, what about you?
So I, much like Danny, my parents don't really know where it came from. My parents met in journalism school. They're both writers. There are no performers anywhere on either side of my family. People who are artistically minded, but never anyone who really pursued it. And like Trevor, I was an athlete growing up. I didn't even start doing any kind of performing art until I had to take some kind of music class in 8th grade. And I asked my older sister, what would be the easiest, and she said choir, because you don't have to learn how to read music. And and that just happened to be the year they got a new choir director, and it kind of...
And he made you read music.
Yeah, and it kind of lit that spark, and then I got into it in high school, and then the theater teacher was like, I want you to audition for the musical. And then I just kind of caught the bug. It was, those of you who've seen me in dance rehearsals, this is going to come as a shock. It's Bobby and Crazy for You, which is like one of the danciest roles in the canon. So I was taking tap for a whole summer, beginning tap with 6 and 7-year-old girls when I was 16, just to kind of learn how to do the very basics.
The sacrifices one makes.
I know, but I was still an athlete through high school, and I never really thought that it was going to be something I did. And then I majored in acting just because I was forced to pick a major. And then not long after, moved to Los Angeles, and then I just kept finding myself in musicals. And it wasn't until I was like 25 where I was like, okay, I love this more than anything else. Like, I don't know why I'm messing around with any other profession. This is the only thing that really makes me feel alive. You never meet better people than people who do this for a living. The director of this show, Gail C., my wife and I low-key credit her with introducing us, because she put us both in the same show. My wife Donna, who lived in LA, I lived in New York, and that's how we met like 8 years ago.
Matchmaker Gail. That's her nickname now.
Gail.
Yeah, like so.
Seriously,
like
Gale Force wins.
Exactly. like if you've worked any other kind of like survival job or any kind of looked into any other professions, once you've done this, it just. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any other professions. Everyone's gonna love what they love, but for me, the the connections in this specific field are addictive. You love people immediately, and they become like family immediately. And then you get to work with people multiple times, and it just everything just grows and grows and grows until you feel like you're going to explode with love.
Enjoy. That's a good explosion, I must say.
It's lots of confetti, ladybugs, unicorns, rainbows. It's great.
Well, we got to come to a close because you guys have been very, very generous with your time. But I know you still have the rest of the day to continue to put the show together. So thank you so much for spending your time with us. I want to thank again Trevor and Brent and Jason and Danny for the time that you've given us in these podcasts, but for the time and the special moments that we will share with you guys on stage. So thank you very, very much again for giving us a little insight into the show and into you personally. Any last words? Why should people come and see the show?
Because Oscar interviewed us.
Hardly.
Just to learn the story behind the music. I mean, you hear the music, everyone knows it.
You love the music?
Yeah, and we all get to do our own interpretations of it, but also the story as to how these songs came to be and how these people met one another. It's fascinating. Yeah.
It's everything you'll really want and a lot more.
Yeah. You get to fall in love with 4 guys at once.
That's a tagline.
Ladies.
There you go.
4 archetypes.
4 different archetypes.
Seriously.
Who's your favorite?
Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you so much.
Round of applause for Oscar.
Oscar!
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Until next time, this is Riverside Beer Backstage Chat. I'm Oscar Simmons.
Signing off.